Merhabalar. İki Savaş Bir Yazar serisi için biliyorsunuz bir süredir Burak Bilgehan Özbek Hoca ile programlar çekiyoruz. 2025'te Joseph Roth'tan bahsettiğimde 3 bölüm çekmiştik. O programlardan birinde söz geçen Michael Hofmann'la e, Roth'un önemli tercümanlarından biri Michael Hofmann ve aynı zamanda e, mektuplarını derlediği bir kitabın yazarı. Onunla yaklaşık 3 ay önce yaptığım bir söyleşiyi paylaşmak istedik sizinle. İlginiz için teşekkür ederiz.
Hatırlarsınız biz hani Roth'un aceleciliğinden bahsettik. İşte bu bir kitabından Perfleter isimli basılmadığı şaibeli olan bir kitaptan bahsettik. O kitabın tamamlanışıyla ilgili bir sıkıntı var. Hep kendisine 3 hafta zaman kaldığını hatırlatan notlar yazdığını söylemiştim. Bu kaynağımda bu kitap. Bu Kieran Pim'in yazdığı Endless Flight, Sonsuz Kaçış kitabı. İngilizce tek biyografisi Roth'un yazılmış olan. Kieran Pim'le ilgili de şunu söylemem lazım. Hep tercümelerden bahsediyoruz biz hep. İşte tercüme, iyi tercüme, kötü tercüme nasıl yapılır falan gibi konuşmuşluğumuz oldu. Kieran Pim kitabının girişinde şöyle bir şey söylüyor tercümelerle ilgili. Çok beğendim. Ben onunla güzel paylaşmak istiyorum. Michael Hofmann'a iltifat ederken Michael Hofmann en büyük tercümecilerinden biri Roth'un. Diyor ki Pim, hiçbir tercüme mükemmel değildir. Tanım olarak mükemmel değildir. Çünkü bir tercüme bir duvarın yıkılıp yerine bir pencere konulması gibi bir şey diyor. Ama hep bir şey var. Hep bir pencere var arada. Yani pencerenin kırıcılığına bağlı, camın kırıcılığına bağlı olarak anlam hiçbir zaman mükemmel olmayacak ama gerçeğe en yaklaştığı durumlardan biri Michael Hofmann'ın tercümeleri diyor. Yani Hofmann da önemli bir karakter Roth Akademisi'nde. Bu 3 hafta sizinle konuştuk hocam. Sonra bu iki çekim arasında ben Roth'un mektuplarını okumaya devam ettim. Ve neredeyse birkaç gün içinde bu mektuplarda şöyle bir notunu gördüm. Michael Hofmann'ın yazdığı. Ne kadar iyi yansıyor bilmiyorum ama Michael Hofmann diyor ki kendisine diyor Roth notlar yazıyordu. 3 gün içinde bitirmem lazım, 3 gün içinde bitirmem lazım diyor. Şimdi Kieran Pim 3 hafta diyor. Michael Hofmann 3 gün diyor. Yani belki çok önemli bir şey değil bu. Hani, ama benim dikkatimi çekti. Bir de radyoloji yani eğitiminin, pratiğinin bir etkisi olabilir bu. Düşündüm ne yapayım bu bilgiyle diye. Hocam Michael Hofmann'a söylemiştim size. Florida Üniversitesi'nde bir kadrosu var Michael Hofmann'ın. Dedim yazayım Hofmann'a. Bu şeyleri gönderdim hocam, resimleri gönderdim. İşte Kieran Pim şöyle diyor, siz böyle yazmışsınız. Hani doğrusu nedir bunun? Yani 3 hafta zaten inanılmaz bir şey bir romanı tamamlamak için. 3 gün akıl alacak gibi değil. Biraz da şeyden bahsettim, işte projemizden bahsettim, işte biz Orwell'den, Zweig'den vesaire konuşuyoruz falan diye. Beklemediğim şekilde cevap yazdı Michael Hofmann. Çok iltifat etti yani, sağ olsun, etkilendim. Çünkü sanıyorum kendisi de fark etmemiş bu 3 hafta 3 gün şeyini. Şöyle diyor, bu diyor benim aslında çok kullandığım bir örnek diyor, 3 gün diyor. Yani ben bu diyor, bu 3 günden neredeyse eminim diyor. Muhtemelen diyor bunu Bronsen, bu ünlü biyografisti, Almanca biyografisini yazan insan, onundan almış olmalıyım diyor. Fakat şu anda kütüphanemden uzaktayım. O yüzden bakamayacağım bilginin kaynağına. İnternette araştırma yapmış, ondan da etkilendim. İnternette bu konuda bir bilgi bulamadım diyor. Kendisi her ne kadar konunun uzmanı olsa da. Ve diyor, işte Kieran Pim'e de bir sorayım diyor. Henüz cevap gelmedi hocam bu şeyin takibiyle ilgili olarak. Böyle hoş bir şey yaşadım. Bir şey daha oldu hocam. Ben Zweig, Orwell linklerini de gönderdim, biz böyle bir şey yapıyoruz diye. Sanıyorum ondan da etkilenmiş. Orwell'le ilgili olarak benim dedi arkadaşım dedi Anna Fander var dedi. Onun dedi kitabını tavsiye ederim size dedi. Bu Wife'dı mı? Biz tabii konuştuk o kitabı. Ben de cevaben şöyle yazdım kendisine hocam. Anna Fander'a siz de benim selamımı söyleyin. Unutanlar için hatırlatayım hocam. Meşhur kitabı Stasiland kitabıdır. Aslında Anna Fander da o döneme, savaş, yani Soğuk Savaş'ın sonrasına ve o döneme çok meraklı bir yazar. Kendisinin hoşuna gidebilir dedim bu ayrıntı, bizim bu yayınlarda Daktilo 1980'lerde yaptığımızı bilmesi diye. Benim açımdan hocam hoş bir anı oldu bu programların çalışması.
Bizim programlara da konuk etsek Korgün abi. Bu insanları.
Hiç belli olmaz. Bakalım, hiç belli olmaz.
Merhabalar. Biliyorsunuz biz Burak Bilgehan Özbek'le birkaç tane Roth videosu yaptık. Bu Roth videolarını yaparken benim çok yararlandığım yazarlardan biri Michael Hofmann. Florida Üniversitesi'nde bir profesör. Kendisi uzun zamandır temas kurmaya çalışıyordum. Nihayet başardım ve kendisi kabul etti. Önümüzdeki 20-25 dakika boyunca Joseph Roth'la ilgili birkaç soru soracağım kendisine. Bundan sonrasını İngilizce yapacağız. Umarım tercüme yapacak da bir software bulabiliriz bundan sonra. Michael, what I said was very briefly as to how I reached out to you. I will cover it again in case some people may have forgotten as to why I'm interested in Roth so much. So very briefly, we are kind of producing videos with a friend of mine from Turkey who is a political scientist, and I'm a radiologist by training. So very, very, very odd couple. But we're both interested
Wonderful.
in the history of the world wars and literature before, during, and after the wars. And my friend Brock suggested that I read Joseph Roth. I had heard about him because I had read about Zweig quite a bit, and in Zweig biographies, Roth is mentioned almost in passing. So what I did was, when I was preparing for Roth, I tried to read the most influential book of the author. I chose Radetzky March, and I kind of liked it very much. Actually, we can start like this if that's okay with you. We can talk a little bit about Radetzky March. When I was reading it, the book that came to my mind was War and Peace. I felt like, there were a lot of similarities between War and Peace and Reddish March. They both talk about essentially families, and how they are affected by big wars. So you want to say a few things about Roth and Reddish March, and then I have more specific questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's the one, it's almost as though, Radetzky March is really unique in Roth's work. I mean, there's nothing in his work that's like it. He was frustrated, I think, in writing a similarly big book about his background, about a Jewish book, a book about Galicia, and that never really quite came about. So there was just this book, which was written in 28, 29, 30, when he was in his mid-30s, about the Trotter family, and the period sort of stumbling from one war to the next, of stumbling from the German-Austrian War in 1866 to World War I, 14, 18. And there it ends, and it's a story of the decline of Austria, the sort of the imminent fission, separation, splitting, explosion, really, of Austria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, leaving only this one Rumpfstaat, the one sort of German Austrian state for which Roth really only in his life only had contempt, and a sort of gentle slide in terms of in manliness, in virility, in terms of the grandfather to the father to the grandson. And that's the story. It's a story about. If it was Hemingway, it would be sort of a story of men in war and peace. But War and Peace Tolstoy's War and Peace is absolutely the right connection.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michael. One thing. When we were talking with my friend about Radetzky March, actually, we dedicated a whole kind of episode to Radetzky March. What came to my mind, but I hadn't prepared for it, but I don't want to say confrontation, but the meeting of the grandson with Sergeant Trotta after Trotta's wife's kind of demise. That was the scene that impressed me most. Because I think in that scene, Roth tells a lot of things without really mentioning them. He doesn't let us know whether each party knows the situation. You really guess a lot. Do you want to say a few things about that? This technique?
Yes, Sergeant Slama.
Slama, exactly. I'm sorry.
You're absolutely no. You're right. You're right. You squirm as you read it. You squirm. It's so embarrassing. It really is. The English say excruciating. It really is excruciating. And Slama, the man whose wife has cheated on him, the sort of inferior, I mean the lower rank man. I mean, there is the difference between young Trotter who has deceived Slama with Slama's wife in Slama's house, and who seems to have no particular conscience, and whose father has leaned on him to really give him a conscience, and to make him see that he can't coast through life. He does too much damage happens if men are allowed to coast through life without facing any consequences. And so the father says, this is all sort of coming back to me. I haven't read it for a little while. Says there are some letters. He wants to give you back he wants to return your letters. He found some letters that you wrote to his wife, and oh God. And the young Trotter thinks, oh no. So it's known and not known, but of course neither of them talk about it, and there is this constraint, I mean, it's really as though they're both in uniform and as though they are both in sort of iron lungs.
Oh.
I mean, they are both so constricted and so unable to express anything of the truth of their situation. It's as though they're both in armor, or both have been sort of dipped in plastic or something, and it is humanly, it's a completely excruciating story.
Yeah, I agree. I was impressed by most, and I read Weights and Measures maybe 2 months later, and it was interesting that, as usual, Roth not resurrected, but used again a character. This time Sergeant Slama kind of consoles the official, saying that, hey, my wife had cheated on me in the past, but you see, I survived.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a way that's sort of why I love him and why I wanted to translate so much of him, is because the books all go in and out of each other's houses.
Right.
The books are all in communication with each other, and no book has perfectly drawn boundaries. I mean, I do think the Radetzky March is really I mean, I compare it to an oil painting. The others are sketches. All his books he wrote very quickly, which isn't, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. But they all have their borders are sort of are not perfectly drawn, and you really, each book needs the others in order to exist. And I think even my secret fear is that people will, people say, what's the best one, and where do I have to, with this sort of bucket list ethos, people will say, what do I have to do, what am I not allowed to miss? And people go to the Radetzky March, and then they won't read anything else. And I think that makes me terribly sad, that idea.
Well, I agree with you. For this project, sorry, go ahead.
They should really. I mean, I've gone to the trouble of translating all these books, almost all of them, and people should go to the trouble of reading all of them. That's what I think.
Well, a couple of things. I agree with you completely, because I read all these books except for two. I just received Confessions of a Murderer. That one I hadn't read yet, and the other one is Right and Left, or Right or Wrong.
Right and Left.
Right and Left, yeah, that one I haven't read. But and his short stories, I think he has very delicious short stories also. Something that's overlooked. I like those also. A few words about translation. Actually, I did speak about your translations in our kind of program, and I think Kieran Pym. By the way, I reached out to Kieran Pym also. We became kind of friendly with him too. Hopefully, we're gonna do the same thing with him at one point. Maybe the three of us can do it at one point. It'd be even better. So in his book, let me show the book for the readers. Endless Flight. This is the one I read first after Ostend, Volker Weidermann's Ostend. I started that one. I'm Turkish. I can only read English and Turkish. So I don't have the, unfortunately, privilege of reading Roth in German. So Kieran Pym talks about your translations. And I did like your translation because I read other translations also of Roth. The analogy he used impressed me quite a bit because I think about translations a lot as I read from English. He used the analogy of opening a window, I think, on a wall. I mean, no translation is perfect, obviously. It can't be perfect. It will sort of try to kind of translate somebody's words into another language. But he says, I didn't find it just now, but he says, you place a window and it is as close as possible to the original. Because there are really bad translations out there these days. So you want to say a few things about your technique to translation and what you think of translations?
Sure.
And before you start, can I also ask a quick question? Radisky March, I understand, was translated by Blanche Guidon first, and Roth had a very kind of rocky relationship
into French, yeah, by her.
You want to say a few things about that also after you talk about it?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think to do with no translation being perfect, the nice thing about Roth is that his novels aren't perfect either. I mean, in the sense that their borders are ill drawn, and the books seem to leak into each other, and they borrow from each other, and so on. And all of that is tremendously encouraging for a translator. You think it doesn't matter that my work is going to be imperfect and flawed and have mistakes and that I'm not going to understand everything. That's one thing. So you're not the product is the product itself is not immaculate, and that's very good, and that made Roth dear to me. And I think then that the fact that he worked very quickly also, and that there's really little chance while translating a book of getting bored with it, because just there's the succession of events. I mean, things fall over each other in these books, and you turn the page and somebody is deserted or abandoned or bankrupt or gets on a train to the frontier, the border, and all of these things happen. In German, you say die Geschehnisse überstürzen sich. I mean, they somersault over each other, and that makes that's a very good thing, because I think the translator is, if you're working on something sort of quite slowly and you can sort of feel it getting cool under you. That's not a. I imagine that's not a good feeling. And at the same time, in your speed, in one speed, and I work fast. I mean, I am German. I have German. It's my first language. I read it. I understand how implicitly how the words are put together. I'm not ever going to misinterpret a word or misunderstand a word. I mean, if you have homonyms or something, it's not a learned language for me, and so that gives me my basic speed. And then on top of that, I think, I mean, it's, I'm banging my own drum, and I shouldn't. I apologize. And then I love the richness of English and the vocabulary of English, and I love especially the Latin words in English. I mean, that half of the English language, which is French and Latin, and that's by way of my history with him. And then I say the Radetzky March, the masterpiece, I saved for myself. I was offered to do it for the centenary of his birth for 1894, 1994, when I translated maybe two or three of the books, but I wasn't. They didn't give me enough time. This was the Overlook edition, and they wanted it in 6 months or something. And I thought for that book, that's not serious.
Yes, I read somebody else's translation.
And that's how the Neugoschel translation came about. But I'm happy to say that my version, which Granta did in about 2000, that will come out in the States, because Roth is now finally, or that book is now finally out of copyright.
I see. That's great.
And
Great.
and I have hopes that it'll come out in maybe in 28 or something like that. You asked me about Blanche Gidon. I always want to say Guidon, but I'm sure it's Gidon.
Not sure, yeah.
Who Roth knew in Paris, and who was who's sort of snowy white-haired elegant old lady, who probably wasn't that all her life, but whom he will have known at earlier times, but they did know each other during the 30s. And he also had a what they call a volcanic temperament, and I think he took against her. He was perhaps also suspicious, and he would have been a difficult author. The other exiled German writers, once 33 had happened, and once the bulk of the German intelligentsia had fled, left, dispersed to other European countries in 33, 34, 35, it was said among writers, and they were published in Holland, their books were published in German by Dutch publishers for a little while. And it was knowledge among authors that it was bad to show up anywhere where Roth had already been, because he will have hoovered up whatever little bit of money there was. And so there would be nothing left for them once Roth had been. He had a great need of money, which was, partly on account of his wife, who was in an asylum, who was schizophrenic from about 1930. As he was finishing the Radetzky March, he'd been worried about her, and she was entered asylums shortly thereafter. So really, there was nothing he was spared in his life. He had a deal of anguish.
Michael, thank you so much. Actually, you reminded me what we talked about, and listening from you is precious, because you're telling me things that I probably would not have known by just reading the books. I read Kieran Pym's book when I had COVID last May, and I was kind of in quarantine, and so I read it so fast, and I had become more sentimental, I guess, because of my illness. So I finished this book with almost tears in my eyes, and then right after that, I continued to read his other books, and also I read your book, the compilation of letters. I'm sorry, compilation of letters with your notes.
Yeah.
I read it at the end. It was such a good way, actually, to kind of, so to speak, close the chapter on Roth, because when you put into perspective as to what he's trying to do when he was writing those letters, it makes a lot of sense. As you said, he wrote pretty much all of his books under duress, when he was essentially in flight from one country to the next with little money. One thing that impressed us was, we eventually decided Roth was not a poor man, but he didn't have money, because he spent money so quickly, and he had a lot of people to support also. That's the other thing.
He did.
So I'm going to ask a couple things. It may be a long question, though. We did a few episodes on Zweig too, and I read, Zweig's books and his biographies. one probably can write and read Zweig's biography without paying so much attention to Roth. Roth is mentioned only in passing in Ostend.
Mhm.
One can understand Zweig without understanding Roth. But the reverse is not
Mhm.
true. One cannot read Roth's life without putting into perspective their relationship. So they have a very,
Mhm.
I don't want to say, uh, let me say, bipolar relationship.
Mhm.
Roth
Mhm.
and Zweig,
Mhm.
it's,
Mhm. Mhm.
as if they're lovers. But one side is always needy, and the
Mhm.
other side is the kind of more mature one.
Mhm.
But I have to give, I think, credit to Zweig, even though I think I read in your book, he's a,
Mhm.
I don't want to say, let me say, lesser author, less command in German language. He is able to recognize that, even though he is the richer one, he is the more
Yeah.
kind of one with more reputation. You want to say a few things about their relationship? And I think I
Yeah.
had asked you this question also, if you remember, at one point, do they become informal, if they ever become informal?
I remember that now. Yes, I don't know. I can't answer that because hmm. I probably said I owe you a look at
No
the
worries, no worries.
German letters. But people, and I mean, I imagine I would have said to you then that people kept the Z, the German, the formal German form, the Wu form. People kept it. People lived with it. I mean, it wasn't thought to be a burden. Husband and wife talked to each other as Z. Um, um, it was. I mean, in a way that nowadays it's people don't do that, and people fall into do at the earliest possible opportunity, and Z is thought to be impolite, which is sort of ironic. um, or it's a deliberate chill. You do it with people you with officials or with people you don't like.
Ah.
I think. But I mean, then it was perfectly. I mean, it was like a suit. I mean, people wore suits, and it wasn't thought to be starchy or stiff, and people could express themselves in it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rolf and Zweig seized each other
I see.
to the end of their time. That would be my hunch. It is a fascinating relationship. I think I mean, Roth does not appear in Stefan Zweig's The World of Yesterday, but I think that also is because Zweig was really interested in dissembling, in hiding himself. He was not. He was interested in obscuring his own realities. I think he had. I mean, Germans are now discovering that he was an exhibitionist. Um,
Yes.
and it rather, scandalous, terrible, awful, unconscionable. Um,
Are you referring
and
to the zoo episode in the Vienna Zoo? Apparently, he exposed himself to young girls
yeah,
and kept
yeah,
a letter from Freud, supposedly telling
yeah,
them, just in case, I get in trouble, here's my letter of kind of,
yes, yes, yes.
okay.
And so Zweig makes himself opaque, and things that are important in his life um, are kept out of his books, and he himself is kept out of his books. And I think Roth really was very close also to Zweig's first wife, to Friederike, who seems to have been a rather kind of wonderful person. Um, and yes, I mean Zweig bankrolled Roth. He did have the stature and the perspicacity, the honesty to see Roth as the far better writer. Um, and Roth didn't keep it from Zweig that he thought Zweig was the far lesser writer. Um, this is all part of Roth's temper and his prickliness, and he thought he found everything very difficult, I think, and this story about the meeting in Ostend when
Yeah.
Zweig buys him a jacket, and Roth empties 3 glasses of coloured liqueur on his trousers and saying, "Now where are my trousers? I need my. Do I have to do this to get trousers out of you as well?" Anyway, very very big, difficult relationship, and I mean there's a wonderful photograph of the two of them side by side, and Roth, who is, I can't remember their respective age, but he's about 15 years younger than Zweig, but he looks like he's about 3 times as old. And it's one of these speaking photographs, a fabulous photograph sitting side by side, and I think at a cafe in Ostend. And this is the original picture that tells you 1,000 pages.
Very true. Taken by Lotte, yes.
Taken by I'd forgotten her name, Lotte Altmann, Zweig's second wife, who then died with him.
And you mentioned Roth's name isn't mentioned in Zweig's work, but it's mentioned in his kind of final note. He says either to his final letter to Frederica, or I think final letter to Frederica, he says Roth and Riegler, I don't know who Riegler is, but probably another author, they did better by dying sooner, so they didn't have to deal with this kind of continued exile.
Can you spell the other author?
I think it's Riegler. I can look it up,
because I mean there was a lot of dying, and I mean there was von Horvath died when a limb of a tree fell on him in Paris. And then in 1938, Ernst Toller hanged himself in New York, and Toller was a friend of a lot of theirs.
Yes.
And when there was a sort of a commemoration of him in Paris, Roth told friends, "The next funeral will be mine." You used to read that Roth had killed himself, which I always thought was a little bit shocking, because it's not true. He didn't. He drank, but that's not the same as killing yourself.
True. That reminds me of a movie of Nicolas Cage. He drinks himself to death. That I was reminded of the movie also when I read Roth's life. I mean, he really, I mean, the amounts that he consumes is just unconscionable. And when we finish, and this is so delicious to me to talk to you about this. I don't want to keep you for long. I have 2 questions for today. One is the origin. Oh, let me say this for last. One is speaking of drinking. He spends quite a bit of time at the end of his life with Irmgard Keun, I think, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, who's a fellow drinker, or who becomes a fellow drinker. I want to say a few things about. I read her book, so actually just one book. Her book, famous book, also when I was studying Roth, and I find the relationship just fascinating. Very elderly-looking, essentially alcoholic, and pretty young, good-looking woman, spending time not weeks, but I think it's almost 18 months they are together in very difficult times of Roth, essentially, at the end of his life. You want to say a few things about their interesting relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I mean this was in 1937 and 1938. I think they met in these émigré circles. I think she was a very bright woman, clever woman, witty writer. Had been an actress, and wrote books. She was quite a fair bit younger. I can't, because she lied about her. She made herself even younger than she was. So I can't now remember off the top of my head how old she was. But she was maybe born in 1910 or something like that. Maybe
she was in her 20s, early 20s, when she published her famous
maybe 1906, Gilgi and so Gilgi and one of us. I think it was the other title. I translated a book called Child of All Nations, in which the character of the father is supposed to have been modeled on Roth.
Interesting.
And this is a man who's a writer. The constellation is there's a child, a daughter, and the two parents, and the father has to be off perpetually. He's like a satellite. He's always off. He's going around the moon. He has to raise money. He has to borrow money. And his whole life is borrowing money. And the funny thing is that he leaves his family in very, very good, we call noble hotels, classy hotels, because they are the least suspicious, and they will credit. I mean, they're not used to having impoverished people living in them, and so the wife and the daughter. They live in these hotels, and they're desperate for the father to return hopefully with money. And the father comes back, and there's money for a while, and they manage to eat a meal, and then the father has to go off again and borrow more money. And all of this is exile, which Joseph Brodsky says, he refers to the tragicomedy of exile. And it is a sort of tragicomedy, and it's all seen through the eyes of this very smart, very precocious girl called Kuli in Child of All Nations. And she's very shrewd on what dictatorship is, and what happens at borders, and relations between men and women, and she's very sort of very, very insightful, rather sort of terrifying little girl.
We talk about. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's it. No,
I was going to say we did talk about Irmgard Keun quite a bit in relation to Roth, but I think we may do a separate episode after I find and read your translation of this book. I think she deserves it.
After Midnight is a great book. I would love to have translated After Midnight. Anthea Bell, my predecessor, translated a book called After Midnight, which is a great novel. I mean, really wonderful book.
And it, I don't know, you must have seen the Netflix series called Babylon Berlin.
I have. We saw it in German television. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay. And the girl in that, I forget her name. It may be Lotte. I forget. The young girl who wants to become a police inspector reminded me the character, the protagonist in Irmgard Keun's novel. The young who wants to become a movie star and kind of likes somebody else. Anyway, I felt like the authors of Babylon Berlin or Berlin Babylon certainly kind of at least were inspired by Keun. So that was something I mentioned. And finally, Michael, while we finish, and as I said, I'm a radiologist by training, just like Blanche Gidon or Gidon's husband. Did you have access to her letters also, or just the letters of Roth? Because we know what Roth has written to him, but we don't know what the reply was when you were writing your book.
To the letters of Gidon?
Yes.
Of the translator? No, I haven't.
Okay.
I didn't. I don't know. I don't know.
I was curious as to what prompted some of Roth's. And going back to radiology, I look for asymmetry essentially and inconsistencies. So when I was reading Kieran Pym's book, I did ask the same question to him also, and he remembered either. In his book, he mentions that I think Perfletter, if I'm making a mistake, please correct me. The book Roth was trying to submit to the Munich newspaper. I forget the newspaper's name also, MMN, probably. He takes notes saying that, I need to finish this book, in 3 weeks. And when I was reading your book, you say 3 days, and that kind of prompted this, I think, very nice conversation with you. I want to find out, which one is correct, and also I wanted to reach out to you. It's not something I do regularly. I don't try to reach out to authors or the books that I like, but it worked out great for me. So, what are your thoughts? I understand you had mentioned Bronson, the biographist, who is the source of this information.
I'm such a slacker. I've promised to look this up for you.
That's all right. That's all right.
I still, I mean, as with the Siezen and the Sie between Roth and Zweig, I still think that he will have said, "Must finish novel in 3 days. Must finish novel in 3 days."
Okay.
It's just how I remember it, and I think not must finish novel in 3 weeks isn't really shocking, and I mean I think most of them were, and it was finished. It wasn't write the whole thing, but must finish it. But people don't like to hear that, and even though I think there's nothing truly bad about it. I say
that's great. We can leave it at that. I mean, some things are not meant to be kind of discovered or ascertained. This may be even nicer to not know.
Yeah.
So Michael, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Delighted.
I may kind of. I hope it wasn't painful for you either. This conversation. I may reach out to you. I may reach out to you again. I don't want to kind of overwhelm you with requests, but I'm almost certain this conversation. I don't know how are we going to translate to Turkish. I'm sure there's a software to manage this, subtitles or something. But I'm sure our viewership will receive this very favorably. Thank you again.
You're so welcome. And I mean, if you come to Gainesville, look me up. We're only along the coast, and I'm always impressed by. I mean, the man who first told me to read Joseph Roth was a math student in Germany when I was a postgraduate. The most interesting people read Joseph Roth. Most interesting and unexpected, and my heart goes out to them.
Thank you so much. Same here.
A pleasure.
We live in Dallas, so if you ever come this way, I would love to entertain you and talk more about Roth and other authors of the era.
Be delighted.
All right.
Thank you. Korgün. Big pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.